The primary problem of this book is the McClanahan-Burleson Gang. Who were they?
So the McClanahan-Burleson Gang was the group that had basically come to run this town. They had taken control of the town by 1934. They are in complete control. Not even when federal agents come in. I mean, and that was, I agree. It's like I read that story's like out of a B movie, where we don't allow feds in our town.
Right.
I mean, literally, he comes into town. He's undercover, but they find out who he is. They confront him right in the broad daylight on the fairgrounds where they're having the fair.
Yeah.
And they tell him, we're rangers, because some of them had Ma Ferguson ranger commissions, the state, but they were special rangers. They weren't actually state rangers, and we can talk about that distinction. But they're like, this is our town, and we don't have feds here, and they beat him up. And I mean, and then they put sand in his gas tank, and said, you better not come back here. And the beauty of that, talking about research, I found that I'd heard a very vague story about that they had beat up some federal agent. That's it. That's all in the local memory of the deal. There was very, very little of that left in local memory. But I found those records in College Park, Maryland, the National Archives facility in College Park, Maryland, which is where they put most of their law enforcement records. And the Secret Service agent in charge based out of San Antonio, who was a notable guy himself, he had done daily reports recording of the process of this investigation and what had happened to his agents in San Augustine. And in the process, when before the All Red Rangers get there, this all starts, and his total inability to get anybody to talk to him at that point in time about what had happened. And then the 180-degree shift he sees after the All Red Rangers come in and start and convince the town that they're going to be safe and they'll protect them from the gang. And then he's able to start getting people to talk. And then the All Red Rangers, Dan Hines and Captain James McCormick primarily, but early on there was a gentleman, Leo Bishop, Ranger, that was also there for about the first 2 months as they're getting it under control. They sent several Rangers in to begin with. So the gang, you're asking about the gang. So the gang, the word gang I used because that was the name given to, that was the term given to them by the law enforcement, whether it's the Rangers, the Secret Service, the media, the newspapers, local paper, local fathers, local leaders, all that sort of thing, referred to them as a gang. And it's important to know because there was a descendant of one of the Burlesons that asked me about it. And there's two very different narratives that have been passed down in that community. And one is through the descendants of Burlesons and so forth. And I had made a point early on, back in 2001, when I first went to San Augustine, I met with kind of a Burleson descendant who gave me their side of the story. And that was really good that she did, because I was able to search for it and look for it. It's like, you always want to have the different sides of the story, because if you're not looking for something, you may overlook it. But I was looking from the beginning for the Burleson side of the story. And the Burleson side of the story was kind of the gist was this, is that this wasn't anything to do with common criminality. This was a feud. This violence was rooted in a local feud that dated back generations. That was the first element of that narrative. The second is that the town was, quote, split 50-50 in their sympathies, on the sides of the feud. Well, so I spent 20 years looking for any evidence of that. And what I found was the exact opposite, that this was a criminal gang, an unsophisticated, mafia type organization led by some key people, who were members of the McClanahans. And that's why that is one thing that was a selection of mine, is I put the McClanahan name first, because the top leaders, the copy de duty copy, and the main capos were mainly McClanahan's, and then their close associates, the Burlesons, come kind of after that in the chain of command, if you will. Again, this is all very informal. And then they did have further out associates, and they did control elements of local criminality, like, bootlegging and stuff. They were, demanding a payoff in order to let them operate and that sort of thing. They weren't bootlegging themselves, but they were demanding payoffs, and they controlled other aspects, gambling machines in businesses and stuff. If you wanted to have one, you had to give them a cut and that sort of thing. And so they were a true criminal gang, as was established by all of the records, that recorded at the time, including the trials.